All right. Welcome to the Ultra High Net Worth Clients Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Broadhead. We started this podcast as a way to create a central resource of the best financial advisor practice growing tips shared by the most outstanding advisors in the industry, of which our guest today is definitely one. These outstanding financial advisors agree to be on the show and provide a ton of value for free, all in the hopes that our audience might learn from their words. My father was a financial advisor, and financial advisors are the main clients we serve. So my marketing agency's mission is to help every financial advisor grow their business in an effort to help the world become more financially secure. Today, we have the rare pleasure of talking with an incredible financial advisor, Todd Pisarczyk. Not Pisarczyk.
You got it.
Maybe
You got it.
Pisarczyk. Maybe Pisarczyk.
As we were saying before, I don't even know if I say it right, Chris. So, you did perfectly.
Hey, thanks so much. Yeah, if any of our listeners out there have want to weigh in on how Todd should pronounce it, tell us in the comments. Todd, welcome. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to do the podcast today. So Todd Pisarczyk, if that's how we say it, but I think that's a great idea to have people weigh in. I'd also love people to weigh in on where they think the name is from, because we've actually heard everything from Polish to Russian to Ukrainian. So I would love to hear that. Live here in Vancouver, Washington. Been here most of my life. I actually went to high school here. I went to college at a place called Western Washington University, which is about an hour north of Seattle. And started my practice right out of college. So I've been doing it since 1999. Worked for a brokerage firm for a little while, and then went independent in 2004. So we just celebrated our 20th anniversary this year.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, thank you. So it's been an interesting ride. So we've got a firm now with 8 people, 4 advisors. We have another advisor in training who's taking his test, so he would probably be up to about 5 advisors here soon. Happens to be my son, so we can talk all about how that goes.
And how does he pronounce his last name?
Well, he pronounces it the same way I do, but
okay, all right.
yeah. But yeah, so it's been a fun ride. I mean, it's been, especially with just the 20-year anniversary this year, it's actually been fun with a lot of the team here, just looking back on how things grew and how we've progressed over the years. And yeah, just feel very fortunate and blessed to be where we are today.
Yeah, that's awesome. My dad's best friend, who he met at Raymond James in the 80s, his son joined his firm maybe 5 years ago. And just last week, he retired, and his son took over the whole practice after, getting to know everything for 5 years. So, that was very exciting.
It's the goal. I mean, I think for me, my oldest is graduating in April, but I have another son 2 years behind him, and for a long time, that's what they've wanted to do. And so, I think for the last, especially 5 years, we've really been focused on, because we went through a time where, we had a lot of other firms offering to buy us out. And so it's been recently a lot of just exploration about what we really want for the future. And I think what excites me at this point is really just trying to build a firm that will last. I think to me, it's exciting to leave a legacy and to really, be able to retire and, turn the firm over, not just to the boys, but we have some great staff here that I would love to be able to, really just see it continue, and see it grow. So.
Yeah, that's really exciting and awesome to, you're creating a multi-generational business. That's an incredible accomplishment.
Well, it's what we're working on. So we haven't accomplished it quite yet. But that awesome. Is one thing that I think has been quite interesting too. Just as we started to think about that, to just realize, like, I have a business partner and co-owner, her name is Linda, and we got to a point about 2 years ago, we were at a Schwab Impact Conference and just realizing, like, how like, we know how to do everything, but, like, how do we, like, again, train that next generation? And
Yeah.
so the last couple of years, we've really been focused on just kind of this notion of how do we get everything out of our heads and just, like, into some processes that the firm can take and
Mm.
run with,
Mhm.
if we're not around. So that's
Wow.
actually been really fun.
Yeah, yeah, can you share some more, kind of, experience there? Like, are you using a specific, process making tool, or how's that all
Yeah.
coming about?
Yeah, we have a coach that we work with, and it's a great program because really, I went through this time where, every time I would go to hire someone or try to figure out, like, what every member of our team should be doing, I just thought there was, like, a right or a wrong way, right? Like, I thought that, "Oh, there's some answer, and this is the way that it's done." And if I could just find the right person or, the right firm to kind of, steal their ideas, that I'd get the right answer. And I remember working with and doing a brief talk with a consultant. I don't know, this is like maybe 5 years ago, and they basically said, "Well, every firm's different." Like, it really there's no right or wrong answer. Like, every firm's different. It's just whatever is right to you. And I remember walking away from that thinking, like, that's so wrong. It's like, that's no, there has to be an answer. Like, that's a cop out. But what I've realized over the last couple of years is, like, no, that consultant was right on. And so what we're going through right now is this process where we're not trying to put ourselves in a box and be like, okay, this is the right way to do it. We're really just trying to look at what are the ways we've done it and what's worked for us and what's worked for our clients, and realizing that, yeah, every firm is completely different. So what works for one might not work for another, and every team's different and different personalities. So we're really just trying to take a look at, um, every step that we do, like everything from, like, okay, a new client calls, and how do we handle that? Because before this work we've been doing, it was like we just we just wing everything, right? It was like, oh yeah, like, let's set up a meeting. So really, like, dialing in every email we send, like, so a client's interested, now we have a specific email that we send to that prospective client. We have a actual process for, like, okay, what are we doing in that first meeting? Again, this is stuff we did, obviously. We just never documented it. And so if something were to happen to uh the leaders in our firm, we were not at a place where the next generation could replicate it, because we were kind of just, again, everything lived in our head.
Mhm.
And so the process is really just looking at the way we do things and what works. Um, and so we went through and we spent a year just doing that. And now we're spending the next year trying to figure out how can we make all those processes better.
Mhm.
So year one was just kind of get it all on paper, and our goal for 2025 is now how can we improve each one of these processes and just make it a little
Mhm.
better for clients.
Mhm. That's awesome. Um, so were there I mean, how do you even figure out, like, which processes you need to process ties?
Yeah, yeah. So good question. That's one of the things our consultant helped us with a lot was just, and again, it's stuff that I didn't even realize, but everything from what are we doing for new clients? What are we doing for onboarding? What are we doing for marketing? Employee reviews. I mean, everything. Like, I woke up at one point during the last year and just kind of looking back going like, what have I been doing for the last 20 years, right? Because I would have never imagined, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners are in the same boat that I was. I mean, I started out of college and like literally it was like, oh, that sounds like a cool job. You know, like um I went to school, I majored in business, didn't know exactly what I was going to do. Um I was fortunate enough to, in town there was a several firms hiring financial advisors, so I'm like, "Oh, once I mean, I'd always had an interest in finance. I'd always been into stocks. I mean, I remember, like, my grandfather left me when he passed away, he left me shares of a company called Roseville Telephone Company near Sacramento. And so I would, like, call Schwab every day to, like, check the balance of my account. I mean, it was funny, like, 800 number and, literally, like, just multiple times a day calling the 800 number and getting my account balance. I mean, yeah.
It's exciting.
So, I think like most advisors, like I never really imagined that I would be going from a situation where I'm an advisor to like now, I'm leading a firm of 8 people and, trying to figure out, all the HR stuff and everything else, right? So,
Mhm.
um yeah, I would encourage people to do this work long before I did. Um, because it's a lot. I think it's a lot easier the earlier you get a start on it. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like, in terms of like the 80/20 principle that there were like 20% of the processes that you did as soon as you processitize them, you're like, "Oh my gosh, like everything is like what are the biggest what processes had the biggest impact
Yeah.
once they were sort of
Yeah.
put on paper?"
Yeah. So, I think the most important and the most exciting, frankly, because I will say, like, I went into this with a focus of because we've done, I mean, we've done so many things over the years and looked at so many different like, hey, how do we grow our business, right? And I think at the end of the day for us, what's always worked is, I mean, like everybody, referrals, right? I mean, most advisory practice grow through referrals, but we've been very intentional on how do we be referable. I mean,
Mm.
you're only going to get referrals if you do a great job for your clients. And a lot of that also is the fact that as advisors, we do a lot for our clients that our clients might not know, like uh, they don't know we're doing it. So, one of the things that I started doing about 2 years ago was, and this was through a lot of kind of it took some practice, but I started doing the whole surge meeting thing, So we took all of our meetings and I do them all in like 2 6-week blocks throughout the year. And for me, that's been a real game changer because I've been in this place of my career where I'm trying to figure out, is it best for the firm for me to continue to work with clients, or is it best for me to kind of move into that more CEO role?
Mm.
And, like we're in that stage where like we're not big enough that we need a full-time CEO. Like, so if I spent all of my days doing that, I mean, it'd be great. I wouldn't have that much to do. So maybe I should do that. Yeah. Um, but this allows me to really be focused on clients for like a 2-month period in the spring and then another one in the fall. And then in
Mhm.
between that, it gives me a lot of time and space to just think about the business and how we
Mm.
can, do better. And everything we're doing is just completely centered around how can we be referable? How can we do a better job for clients? How can we let them know the things that we're doing for them? And I will tell you, like we've noticed, even just within 6 to 12 months of doing this, I feel like we're already noticing a difference in the amount of new clients we're taking on. But that process really revolves around being so that process would basically be the process we go through in servicing clients. So our client planning process. So every spring, we've decided to spend that time really being focused on updating clients' financial plans. So for every client meeting, we are really intent on making sure all that information is updated. One of the real game changers too that I've noticed, I'm sure a lot of advisors struggle with this where, you reach out to your clients for a meeting, and I was finding that before we were more intentional about this, I would bet that maybe, if it was time for clients to come in, half of them probably wouldn't, right? Like they didn't need to. They're like, "Oh no, things are fine. We trust you. Everything's going great. The market's up. We don't need to come in," right?
Mhm.
What we found is that when when we become more intentional about what the meetings are about, and we let the client know, so we don't just say, "Hey, it's time for your review." We say, "Client, this is our spring review. Here's what we do. We're going to be updating your financial plans. We have a theme every year. So, like this for 2025, we're going to be, in addition to updating the financial plans, we're going to be making sure that we're talking to all of our clients about their estate plans and making sure that's updated, see if they have any questions around that. Um, and we'll let them know ahead of time. And we found that that's generated a whole lot more clients coming in for their reviews because they know what it's about. And then in the fall, we've gotten really focused on tax planning. And that's been another real game changer in our practice is, again, we've always done the thing where, if we talk to clients about giving and, Roth conversions and all that kind of stuff, but a lot of those calculations you're doing behind the scenes and the clients might not even know. Like you probably run the math and say, okay, does a Roth conversion make sense for this client? No, it doesn't. So I'm not going to bring it up in the meeting. Well, now we have this neat checklist that we go through and we say, hey, here's all the things that we looked at. You don't need to do anything, or here's the things you do need to do, but they also know that you did that. And we found that last year was the first year that we implemented tax planning for our fall meetings. This year, it was crazy because I've never had more clients come in for their reviews. I mean, I I'll bet yeah, I have about 160 clients that I'm personally responsible for at the firm, and I'll bet only 10 of them didn't come in. I mean, we've never had that like percentage of people come in. Because again, people are busy and it's like, no, things are fine. I don't have any questions. I don't need to come in. So that's been the real game changer for us is just really dialing in that process we're going through with our clients and when we're updating plans and when we're doing tax planning and even what times of the year we're doing things. And a lot of just little things like creating meeting agendas for every clients now. So when they come in, we actually have an agenda. We send it to them ahead of time. I mean, all that stuff doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it's really made a huge difference.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, even if you're not planning on having someone else use your process, when you make a process, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I would have totally forgotten that
Yeah.
part."
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
I find it helps me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
And I love, your incorporation of the surge meetings,
Yeah.
because I find that, we think that we're always the best at everything we do all the time, but it's like even podcasting, like, I didn't podcast last week because it was, like, the holiday, or I might have done, like,
Yeah.
1 or 2. But it's like even taking a couple days off, like, I noticed, like, I get rusty, like, certain things are not as, like, tuned in. So it's like, if you're just doing all those meetings twice a week, 6-week periods, you're probably like super dialed in for every
Yeah.
meeting and it's just a well-oiled machine.
Yeah. Chris, I think that's why podcasts like yours are amazing because
Oh, thank you.
yeah, well, it's awesome because I learned that from listening to another podcast, you
Oh,
know,
wow. That's
um,
great.
and it I think as when I used to work for a brokerage firm, there was a lot of camaraderie. You know, you're always talking to other advisors and sharing ideas and stuff like that. And I do think that one thing that's been very different about going independent is all of a sudden it's like you're kind of on your own. Especially when I started, it was just
Mhm.
me and my business partner, and it's like, where do you go? Who do you talk to? So platforms like this just create, I think, such a great opportunity to learn from other advisors and what they're doing, and just picking up little snippets here and there. But yeah,
Mhm.
you're totally right. Like I wouldn't have I wouldn't have learned that if it weren't for something I heard on a podcast, and then I was like, oh, I should try that. Like I literally just like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna try that this time, and it worked.
Mm. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. And then and then the same, positive effect happens outside of those, 6-week, surges. Then
Yeah.
you're fully focused on, growing the business, like,
Yeah.
focused on the business. You're like,
Yeah.
"Here's what I do at this time. Here's what I do at this time."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I apologize, I was kinda rambling there because I missed the point of the last question, Chris, but yes, to answer what you said earlier, yeah, like, getting in that mode of just meeting after meeting, yeah, like, I thought initially that it was gonna be really tough, but no, like, you're totally right. One of the huge benefits is that I feel like I'm better in the meetings because you just keep doing it, right? And you
Mhm.
each meeting, I feel like I get a little better. So, for any clients listening to this, you should schedule more towards the end because I'll be sharper. Yeah. But no,
We'll put
you
that reminder in the show notes.
yeah, you get in that mode, you're totally right. And I get energy from it. I mean, the thing is, I thought it would be really difficult, but I find myself being really kind of excited. So going through all those meetings with clients is great. It forces you, I think, to be more prepared for the meetings because you know that if you've got, 4 or 5 meetings scheduled during the day, it's like you got to be, you got to be on and really prepared. And then you're totally right. For me, the huge benefit is all that time in between our blocks of meetings. I can really focus on just helping better the practice and better the company and, what can we be doing better for clients, and just having that space to really think and dream about that stuff is great. So, I love it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It seems like there's so much, like, power and impact can come out of those times, and, business owners, we all understand, like, "Oh, I need to work more on the business rather than in the business," but that it's so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
It sounds like you are, getting some momentum and some traction, like, focusing on working on the business. Have there been any and oftentimes I find when I do get that chance to work on the business, it's like such an obvious thing that I should have done like
Yeah. Yeah.
months or even years ago. It's like, oh my gosh, like how really? Like, so it was right there the whole time. Have there been any great like insights or discoveries since you've really made a point of focusing on the business rather than in
Yeah.
the business?
I love how you say that, by the way. I love that, just that notion of working on the business and not in it. Uh,
Mhm.
because I think that for me, as the business has grown, I've gone from a point where, like, initially you're working really hard just to try to get things up and running. And then I went through a period where I had enough clients and things were going well enough to where, you know, I earned a good living. And also it was the sweet spot of earning a good living and also having a ton of free time.
Mhm.
Um, and then the business grew to a point where, like, oh, actually, like, as you get more clients and as your business grows, you're busier. There's more to do. And so I think that hearing you say that actually makes me think about the fact that I spend a lot of time in the business. And so having that time to remove myself and think about that working on the business thing, I really like that. Um, but what are some of the biggest insights? I think for me right now, we're still in the process of dialing these processes in. And so right now, most of my time is spent on still trying to better the processes.
Mhm.
But I think the number one thing that has been really exciting is just this notion that I mentioned earlier about I'm always thinking about how can we make ourselves more referable,
Mhm.
and I read a book, which again, I say read. I will admit I don't read. I listen. So I say read books, but what I really mean is listen to them. So I've never been a big reader.
Consume books.
Consume. I like that. See, I'm I'm getting a lot. This is great. I consumed um a book called Unreasonable Hospitality.
Oh, that's
Have you
great.
heard of that?
Yeah. Mhm.
Amazing, amazing book. And so I think that has actually been my biggest insight recently is that I think it's gone from a point in our business where I remember the firm I started with, it was all about what investments did you have, right? Like I started in 1999. We were all talking, every firm was like, oh, we have the greatest research, like we have the best stock pickers. We can get you the best bonds, that kind of stuff. And the business has really transitioned to where now, I remember like, I feel like I was on the forefront of the importance of planning. I don't know exactly what clicked, but I remember at the firm I was with, they didn't do a lot of financial planning. It wasn't a big thing, but I really latched onto this idea of how important it was. And so from an early stage in my career, we were really intent and focused on doing really deep financial planning for clients and letting that drive the investment decision. But now everybody does that, right? So like it used to be that you could differentiate yourself by saying, "Oh, we do really great financial planning. Everyone else is just doing investments." Well, now everybody's doing great planning. Everybody's doing the investment management. So I believe that what really sets us apart, and I've thought about this, and again, this I think has been the insight that has been most impactful for me, is to think about the fact that I don't even think we are necessarily in the service business anymore. I mean, I really think we're in the hospitality business, just like the restaurants in that book, right? Like we are trying to create an experience for clients. And I think that it's just like, again, when you're in that restaurant, it's like you can go anywhere and get food, but people are always willing to pay for an experience as long as it's good and worth it. So that's what we're trying to create. And I think that's been the biggest insight that I've had is just this notion of that's what we need to be striving for because, obviously like the portfolio manager, the planning, all that stuff has got to be there. Um, and we spend a lot of time making sure that we're doing a great job at that. But if you think what really matters, it's like how you make your clients feel. And that's that experience component and that hospitality component. So we are really trying to dive deep into that and just really double down on how can we do things at the firm to make that better.
Yeah, that's awesome. You are not the first guest to recommend that book. We've had a couple guests, and then on a couple other podcasts that my team produces, other folks have recommended that. I should probably read it. I've actually recommended it myself, having not even read it. I was like, "Yeah, you should read this book. I heard it's great." Um, can you share some tangible takeaways from that book that you've incorporated to deliver unreasonable hospitality and make your firm more referable?
Yeah. So we recently had one of our longtime clients pass away. And, this is not a unusual story. I'm sure a lot of advisors have clients that, he would always tell me like, hey, if something happens to me, one of the primary reasons that I'm working with you is that I want you to be able to take care of my family, and in this case, like, his wife, but obviously not just his wife, but he had this really great, really neat trust set up to really like just create this legacy for a lot of their kids and grandkids and everything. And it's been really fun to work with him on that. But I had the whole team here read the book. And I think it's one of those things where what I took away from it, and my favorite part of it was the fact that it's not the canned stuff. Like, we've done little things around here, like, when clients come in, I thought this stuff, Chris, was like the cheesy. Like, I would hear this and I would see people do it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like so cheesy. But after reading the book, I'm like, no, it's not. But little dumb things like we have this cool drink menu now. So like when clients come in, we've made an effort to be like, we have really great coffee. We have all these really cool drinks they can pick from. We have
Oh,
cookies and snacks and stuff like that. Especially, and here's the other cool thing about doing the surge meetings is we know that we have all these clients coming in over a certain period of
uh,
time.
yeah.
So when they come in, it's just little stuff like that. Like, hey, we've
Mm,
got nice drinks for them. We have nice snacks presented in a really cool way. Stuff like that. But what I learned from the book is like, yeah, you got to do that stuff. But the stuff that really matters is like, when they talk about that family like never having a New York a deep dish pizza, right? And the guy just overheard them talking about that. So when he did, he went and made sure that, and they served that to him in the restaurant, right?
mhm,
That was a situation where they were just listening, right? And so I think the biggest insight, along with, yeah, we got those little touches, which is neat, but the biggest insight is to really make sure that all of our team is constantly looking for opportunities. So one of our team members, her name's Mara. I mean, to watch what she has done, just diving into helping our client's family with all of this estate stuff. I mean, she is going to every meeting with the client's estate planning attorney, and she's going over to her house to help her like with the client's pensions and stuff that has nothing to do with our firm. But I really think it stems from just trying to create this culture here of like, how can we, when it's needed, we're not trying to force it, but like when something comes up or we hear something or we see a client where they have a need, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not about how much time is that going to take. It's like the team is just really um anxious to jump in and be able to try to serve.
mhm,
And I think that's that's the part to me that stands out is just really the listening. Um, it's been fun too, like really, really, really like I've created a file. So in our contact management system, I've encouraged all of our team members, like as soon as they learn anything, like just to be on the lookout to like
mm,
learn those things about your clients, like what sports team they like, or stuff like that. Like my wife makes these she recently I guess it's been a couple of years, she got into pottery and she makes these amazing like dishes and mugs and things like that. And have a client of mine that loves the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, just like more than most people love things. I've never seen anyone love a sports team like this guy loves the Chiefs.
mhm,
And it's where he's from. So that's, there's a tie there. And just like little dumb things like that, like knowing that about him. So we picked him up a Kansas City Chief mug for Christmas, and in this case, my wife handmade it, which is really neat.
Wow.
That not all advisors have access to some mugs for free like I do.
Master craftsman. Like, thank you.
But like clients love that stuff because it just shows that you are listening and that you know them on a personal level. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. No, I mean, a handmade gift about something that, you just overheard them talking about, like, I mean, that sounds like the definition of unreasonable
Yeah.
hospitality there, so
Yeah.
that's great, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Todd, man, time just disappeared from us.
That's
I
how it
could
goes.
we didn't even get to, like, kind of my more mainstream questions. You had so much cool stuff you're doing just, on the bleeding edge here, so,
Yeah.
we'll have to have you back to dig into why you went independent and niches and how you got
Yeah.
traction. So we'll have you back on at a later date. But my final question for you today, unfortunately, is what are you working towards? And it's an open ended question. You take it any
Yeah.
direction you want.
Yeah. I'll just reiterate, I think it's something we talked about earlier, but at this point I'm just really working towards um how do I leave a legacy with the firm, and
Mhm.
we're working really hard on how do we keep all the things that our clients like, that we do well, how do we continue that to the next generation? How do we build a firm that goes long beyond us? I think for me, like, there's obviously like businesses around town here that I see that have been around. It's like you hear, oh yeah, that was started by so and so's great grandparents, and they've been in town for 100 years. It's like
Mhm.
I would love to fast forward 50 years and to still see our firm here with the same
Awesome.
name, and so that's
Yeah,
really, I think,
yeah,
at this point what we're working towards in a nutshell. So
yeah. Same name and maybe finally figure out the exact pronunciation.
well, Chris, if you do have me back on, I'd love to do that. And I will do some work to make sure that we know by then what the right pronunciation is.
Beautiful. I look forward to that. And until then, Todd Pisarczyk, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This was a true pleasure. You're a pioneer, and I could continue asking you questions for the rest of the afternoon. And I'm very excited to continue watching you on your journey. Where can my audience find out more about you?
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words, Chris. This has been great. And again, I just want to compliment you on what you're doing because it's a it's needed. I mean, I just, as an advisor being out there, it's so great to be able to plug in, hear from other people, other great guests you've had.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, our we know our special. I got a LinkedIn page, and we have an Instagram, Momentous Wealth. But that is one thing that is on my list, is to try to figure out where we should be doing a little bit more on the digital side. But that's another
Cool.
conversation we can have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, Todd, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. To all our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in and keep on growing out there, everybody. See ya.